My name is Daniel Pinchbeck, and I'm the author of a couple books. I wrote a book called Breaking Open the Head that was about shamanism and psychedelics and tribal ritual. Then I wrote a second book called 2012 that's about prophecies and consciousness transformation. What I discovered as I started this investigation was that there seemed to be a similarity between a bunch of these prophecies. There's the Mayan calendar material, which suggests that the year 2012 is going to be a major shift of some sort, or the Hopis, who believe that we're in this transition between the fourth world and the fifth world. Even the kind of fundamentalist presentiment that we're in this time of apocalypse, which, I mean, they've given a certain interpretation to, and I look at it differently. The Hindus' idea that this is the Kali Yuga, it's the last cycle of 4 long ages, and that might be moving to the next cycle.
How do you feel that we're going to shift into that cycle? Is it spiritually or mentally or physically or all three?
I'd say probably it's all three. I mean, in the book, I suggest that things that seem really material right now, like the evolution of technology and the kind of destruction of the environment, are also aspects of a psycho-spiritual process, where sort of the apocalypse literally means uncovering or revealing. So it's a time when we're being forced to, like, all of our shadow projections, all the shadow projections of the psyche are being manifested, and they're taking these physical, really drastic physical forms, so that we have the opportunity to see them clearly and then maybe reintegrate them.
So, do you think that that's happening starting now, or is it something that will happen soon?
I think we're already in the apocalypse period. I think that some events like the World Trade Towers falling seems very indicated in the Book of Revelation from some form of prophetic foreknowledge that the writer must have had. I think it's an ongoing, deepening process. And then part of the process seems to be this kind of this sort of psychic level of reality is becoming more available or more tangible.
So with that shift, do you think all things on Earth will change, like physically?
I don't know. I mean, it's possible that over a longer period there will be a shift. I mean, I got very interested in the ideas of Rudolf Steiner, who's an Austrian visionary and philosopher, and he also saw. He said that the mission of his life on Earth was to bring the knowledge of reincarnation back to the West. And that not only did people reincarnate again and again, but the planet itself reincarnated. So this was the 4th incarnation of the Earth, moving to the 5th incarnation, which is identical with what the Hopis said. This was the 4th world moving to the 5th world. So I thought that was a really interesting correlation. And that each of these different worlds are different kind of realizations of consciousness. And Steiner talked about when there's this shift, like everything reaches a different level of consciousness. So plants are now in kind of, according to him, in a deep sleep consciousness, and they enter kind of dream sleep consciousness. We go into a higher, deeper level of consciousness. Even the minerals become more conscious. So it does seem that he's suggesting there's a kind of deeper level transformation, kind of this astral level of reality becomes more into focus in some way.
Do you think struggle might be necessary in order to get to that level of consciousness?
It seems like that we're in something similar to a kind of birth process, and maybe everything that we've gone up to this point has been kind of like fetal development, where we've gotten these signals introduced, different ideas, thought systems, technological breakthroughs, discovery of LSD or psychedelics or whatever. And we're now in this kind of birth trauma phase. And birth is a very messy process that, in a sense, seems very, very violent. So there probably are going to be very difficult events corresponding to this shift in consciousness.
Is there any relation to belief systems with that, like gods? Our beliefs in God, will that change, do you think? Do you expect that?
Right. Well, I mean, in the book 2012, I look at the possibility that quantum physics has put forth that there's actually that consciousness, maybe in some ways, the fundamental reality rather than matter, and that there's a transcendent domain of consciousness, that we are living in this kind of space-time sort of matrix, three-dimensional, four-dimensional matrix, but there are higher levels where things are kind of intermeshed differently, and so it may be that on those higher levels, well, this is what these quantum physicists say, that what we're experiencing as kind of linear events, there's a kind of, on a higher level, it's actually an all-at-onceness, which is also very much the way the Hopi seem to think about time. So it seems to be this kind of unfolding of consciousness that's taking place, and it has to happen in a certain sequence. And we're just at a certain point in that sequence now, and watching or witnessing and experiencing as that consciousness unfolds.
Do you think it'll happen to everybody simultaneously then?
Well, if this is, in a sense, all I'm offering is a hypothesis or a thought experiment.
No one knows.
Right, but it seems likely that the way that people have been dealing with each other is not going to be able to continue, which is going to force basically everybody into a different mindset. So I think we might see the collapse of boundaries, nation states. We might move into a more kind of unified planetary consciousness, and different social structures would emerge from a different relationship to time and space and being. Just in the way in the last few centuries, we've reshaped the whole surface of the Earth with technology, which is basically projecting our consciousness into material form. If we experience a shift in consciousness, it might lead to a different manifestation in the material world. One way I think about it in the book a lot is if you think about electricity and lightning in the 1750s, people had experienced lightning and static shocks, but they had no idea that you could bring electricity down into a power that would transform the planet and create urban industrial grids. And once they understood that, they were able to start doing that over a couple of centuries, which is a total blip in terms of evolutionary time. So we now seem to be on the threshold of that same kind of realization with psychic energy or psychic phenomena, that more and more people are experiencing synchronicities, telepathic events, strange manifestations, and they're just becoming, a part of people's lives. Like once you've had these experiences, you no longer keep questioning them. It becomes kind of boring to question them. You're just aware that there's this other energy that's manifesting. So that energy seems to be becoming more tangible and more available to us. So there might be a threshold switch where we're able to use psychic energy and psychic phenomena similar to how electricity was out of our capacity and then became something that we were able to utilize scientifically and rationally. And I look at different tribal groups like the Hopi, who seem to have maintained ways of creating climate change, like bringing in rain through rain dances. And I talk about this Cambridge anthropologist who was a total materialist, but he went and worked with the Hopi, and he said that sometimes he was embarrassed to admit they would have this rain dance. It would be a clear blue sky, 120 degrees, and they would dance for 20 minutes and rain would start to fall. So if they're able to do that, it means that there is a kind of human connection between the human psyche and the natural and sort of cosmological world, and that is what we're sort of going to be forced to bring into focus. And of course, when you think about the major danger we're facing on a planetary level is now climate change. So it might actually be part of this trauma that's going to force us into a kind of collective planetary consciousness, what some people call the noosphere, which is kind of the thought structure, the mind structure around the planet, where we're able to influence what actually happens on the biosphere through this intensifying of consciousness.
So Mother Nature's waking us up while in the physical world, while the rest of us is waking up in the other realms. Is that true?
Well, I'd say it's a non-dual process. I don't posit a duality between the material world and the spiritual world. I think it's all, and I don't think the indigenous tribes experience that either. It's all one continuum.
So there's unity in all. All is one.
Right. Well, there's a you can reach a kind of non-dual perception where you recognize that the inner and the outer are mirror reflections of each other.
Perfect. Wow. Do you feel as though the prophecies of 2012 are a specific date or do you feel as though it's like one day we'll wake up and it'll be a different world, or is it just an evolution? What's your feeling on that?
Yeah, maybe both. I don't know. I mean, it seems like the Mayans put a lot of work into establishing these particular dates, that particular date, and it connects to a astronomical event where the Earth and the Sun line up with the dark rift in the center of the Milky Way. There also seems to be a whole evolutionary timetable for consciousness that relates to that date. So it seems to be a date that somehow is really embedded in the structure of what they understood reality to be. However, I think it's dangerous to over-literalize it. I think it's very silly when people are like, oh, 2012, we just wait for then, and we just have to survive through then to then, and then we'll be entering this new reality. I think it's exactly the opposite. That actually we have to bring that new reality into being through incredibly hard work and conscious effort in this interim period. This is actually the critical period if we want to make the positive change.
So we have a choice in our own right, is that right? That we have a choice to either let the world self-destruct or to reinvent it?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's our choice.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the birth of the Evolver and what that looks like in our daily lives? Sort of that hard work and the rebirthing that has to happen?
Well, yeah, I think everybody, when they understand, if they accept some of these new ideas or this new paradigm or template, they have to come at it from their own angle. Like, how can they contribute to this process? Like, no longer seeing yourself as this kind of individual ego who's just consuming whatever you need to consume to get ahead, but more like, how do you conceive of yourself as a kind of sentient aspect of this planetary ecology, working with everybody else to make a shift. So this company Evolver that I started with my friends really came out of trying to figure out how you would help to manifest that kind of consciousness and give people actual tools and support systems. So if there were some critical transition periods, people would be able to access alternative energy, permaculture tools, things relating to alternative health, consciousness development. So on the one hand, there's a practical kind of membership aspect where we'll help get people connected to companies that are ecologically progressive and sustainable, and also maybe these tools that could be useful. And on the other hand, we'll be creating media that supports a sort of positive paradigm about human potential and human consciousness. Looking at really specific examples of people who've done amazing things and continue to come up with brilliant ideas and so on.
What sort of new paradigms do you know about that are emerging that mainstream might not know about yet, and you think are kind of worthy of people considering?
Good question.
For example, you were talking about the credit card, or the card, the club card that would in certain types of businesses, or new paradigms in business.
Right. Well, yeah, I think we can, some of the tools of capitalism we can kind of repurpose if we have a different intention around them, because capitalism and the corporate culture is a super efficient methodology. So how do we sort of co-opt that methodology, but then use it for a more benevolent or beneficial system? So that's part of it. But in terms of it's all the stuff I've been talking about, like recognizing the reality of the psychic level of existence, which is something that the mainstream still doesn't really allow in. I mean, it's seen as a fantasy or as fiction, but not as something that's tangibly actual and available. And also, we have to work out a different relationship with indigenous cultures and indigenous people on this continent. And even the best, my experience has been, even people who are really fascinated by Indian culture and indigenous culture, there tends to still be a kind of patronizing attitude or distance from the culture, rather than really recognizing that, we may have things to learn from these cultures that are absolutely necessary to our near-term survival, so that we really have to come at them with the idea of making a real exchange of knowledge and heart, rather than it just being an imposition, or like I have a lot of friends who now do rituals where they'll say aho and they'll pass around talking sticks, but they haven't done the work to become part of those traditions. So in a way that would be to me like stealing something from those cultures,